How you doing, everybody? Welcome to Four Seas One's Family. 欢迎收看下一家. Thanks. How you doing, Earl? How you doing? Glad you jumped in there. And thanks you for your comment. Well, I'm going to jump in here for a quick. It's like I couldn't sleep, and it's like coming up on 5:30 a.m. here on January 9th here. And I just couldn't sleep, and some things came across my head that I want to put something quick together to rant about. Maybe not. I shouldn't even say rant about. So let me open up some stuff here. Hold on. Got to open some screens here. Let me open some screens here. There's always something, when you try to get ready to do something, you try to open up something, it's like everything doesn't work right. Especially when you got to do this, by memory and by your own. So let's see if I can switch or something here. Okay, there you go. This is going to be a part 2 of what I mentioned in my last stream a couple of days ago, or a day ago, I think it was. I was editing my next, I would say my lecture on this channel. But something came up, and some of you out there know. Earl knows, we know what's happening out here in this region and with the neighbors next door. But something popped up on the internet that I just want to talk about real quickly. And something popped up on Joe Rogan's podcast on Spotify. It was quite interesting that I really had to listen to twice. He had a guest by the name of Peter Zaham on Joe Rogan's, on Joe's side. He wrote Peter Zahan. So I looked it up, and this guy is a geopolitical analyst and an author of several books about geopolitics, which includes economics, cultural changes, over very, and from a historical, not only a financial or political perspective. This guy, this is the first time I've heard of Peter Zahan. Yeah, they're at it again. Yeah, they're at it again. Yeah, the neighbors are at it again. They're at it again. Yeah, like you said earlier, you said deja vu, but yep, the neighbors are at it again. But, this guy was on Joe Rogan's show, and he dropped quite a few bombs, I would say, in the verbal sense, I should stress, okay? This guy obviously knows what he's talking about. And if, I don't usually talk about, what other podcasters are doing or other so-called content creators or people that have something to say on here on YouTube, but I'm going to say a little bit about something. But this guest that Joe has is very, very well in tune to the global situation over a long historical perspective. This guy knows what he's talking about. Peter Zahan is his name, and you can visit his site at Zaham. That's ZEIHAN.com. This guy has wrote some heavy books, and this is the type of stuff that I am very interested in. Some of you know that I studied modern Chinese history, and I probably know quite more than a lot of these politicians in the United States think they know about China. But it's been a long time. It's been over 30-something years reading stuff both in English and Mandarin Chinese and stuff like that. But like I said, this is part 2 of my last live, which I got a whopping 40-something viewers. Okay. But this Peter Zaham, his last book is called The End of the World is Just the Beginning. And it looks like a very interesting title, which I'm going to get. And most likely I'm going to get if he has it on Amazon, what they call it, the book version, the recorded version. I can listen to that. But he dropped a few interesting things about the neighbor next door on Joe's show. And basically it has to do with the population of China and how China has not been very forthcoming with their information about their population, economic, intellectual property rip-off of the world. And this is sad, but he dropped some information that really people need to pay attention to, because this will affect everywhere. Because right now we know that China is the manufacturing hub of the world, and also a great importer of overseas agriculture and fuel from the rest of the world. So if China has a bump, everybody's going to feel it. This is one of those situations when everyone puts everything in one basket, and somebody trips and the basket drops and all the eggs get cracked. This is one of those situations. This is one of those situations, guys. And yeah, you look him up. Please look him up, Earl. Peter Zeihan, Zeihan. The website is Zeihan, Zeihan.com. This is a person I think that I wish I'd known about years ago. Boy, sometimes, it's very interesting how people fly over your head when they don't make a lot of, Jordan Peterson type of noise. It's really pain in the neck, but kind of unfortunate for me. I wish it was more people like him out there in the world. Yeah, all eggs in one basket. The world has it. How you doing, Sa? Totally got it. 你是哪里人吧? Oh, thanks for coming by. Thank you for coming by. This guy, like you said, yeah, I totally got it. I hope I do it. I'm quite ashamed in many ways of how people in the Western population are so caught up in their own thing. I know, they got to survive. But a lot of people in the Western nation, in the Western world, need to understand that things have changed. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, especially from Peter Zeihan's point of view. He mentioned, like I just mentioned, about how the falsification of, 大陆 OK 现在在美国 OK 了解哇我的简体字 Where are we here 我的简体字真的很差我比较会写读繁体字 No 我不应该说繁体字正体字我应该说正体字是大阪 Oh sorry 看错Now let me finish here Now basically it's like this. Now, remember, it's 5:30 right now, a.m., the 9th here in Taiwan, and I just couldn't sleep because this has been on my mind. But he talked about how China over the years, haven't been really forthcoming with, the information to the world about what's going on in China. And he also mentioned that China has underrepresented, or the numbers of the population has been miscalculated. Talked about international, properties being, ripped off, which is, I have to tell you, a lot of nations do it. But China, with its population, was really blatant at it. And I guess that's the way it goes. Instead of complementing other countries' developments, this was total, cut and paste type of stuff, which is just wrong. Taiwan has been through that too, back in the day when I came back here. But Peter talked about how the old world is changing. Basically, this is what this means. The old world was able to use its economic power and its control of the sea lanes. Now, I shouldn't give too much about the podcast because I think it's worthwhile seeing, and coming from Mr. Zeihan's mouth, and he's a lot more fluent in expressing his points. And I should not be here copying him fully. But he stressed how the world is changing and how these early world conquerors or colonialists or whatever you want to call them, how they were able to use their prowess to basically conquer the world. Okay. And they did this. They did do some high misstepping too, right? They did do some high misstepping. But still, other nations have caught up. They sent their children over to Western nations and other places to learn and they got very good at it. They got very good technically, or they're more hungry for the skills, which is great. I mean, it's something that I see a lot just going to the wayside in Western nations. People are not as hungry about being more entrepreneurial, more globalized, more, well, value of education. I guess when people are coming from third world nations or whatever, third world nations, they're a little bit more hungrier into getting and to succeed, and higher value is placed on education and savings and not complaining and just living through the discomforts that they may feel. Move the camera a little bit, but he mentioned how in this situation there's a major paradigm shift now that's changing. Now, as nations all over the world develop, people don't have large families anymore. I mean, back in the day, there were these great insurance companies around that took care of people as they got older. What happens was people had, they lived on farms, had big, a lot of children and stuff like that. Well, as the world modernized, people moved out of urban areas and moved into, the countryside rural and moved into urban areas, and had started to have smaller families and financial, prowess of families rose. The corporation of farmland has been taken over by big companies everywhere in most parts of the world, governments and stuff like that. And people are living longer. People are living longer now in the industrialized nations, I should say, or the companies that got an early head start on expanding their financial prowess and stuff like that. But let me continue here. Yes, it's China's history. They always claimed other countries will invade them to justify their aggressiveness. I don't for it. Well, let's be fair. China has been invaded by Western nations. Okay, you probably know about you probably know about that, but that's another topic. Maybe I can talk about that later if people are just interested in that. China has been hit hard too, but they also had a lot of internal conflicts that caused their weakness. And if you look at one of my very old episodes about maybe 2 years ago, I talked briefly about how China and Africa in many ways in the early part of their existence were very much the same. The only thing is that China's first emperor, Qin Shi Huang, has just wiped out all the intellectuals, burnt all the books that were going against his rule, and reset mainland China. Well, and just took these small warring parties and crushed them basically. But Africa didn't do that. Africans just kept fighting each other, and guess who came inside and basically took advantage of them. And a lot of the internal fighting in Africa were between the Africans, who some of them happen to be selling each other. But that's a whole different conflict that I don't want to get into right now, because, it's like I said, it's like after 5:30 in the morning here. But the world industrialized. Smaller families, farms are being bought up by big corporations. That's the shift all over the place. If you look in Japan, when I go down to Shinjuku, I go down there and I don't see any private housing anymore. It's owned by all companies and stuff like that. They own all the buildings and all the housing complexes and all that stuff like that. Big corporations that basically lease out to people, because the housing there is so doggone expensive in Japan, and the prices are going up here in Taiwan too, but moving right along, guys and girls. So to continue, families got smaller, farmlands taken over by heavy machinery, or industrialization took over. People started to live longer. And what happens is that you need a a younger population to support the country's or nation's infrastructure. And I'm talking about not only the simple things like the roads, hospitals, but the military. The young folks have to be around these are the ones who spend money in every nation. The 20s to at the very most 30, 35. And usually the investors are those who are 40 years old and older. They're getting older. They're not out doing much of the hard physical labor anymore. It's the young folks who are doing all of the how would you say, hard labor to build up nations, spending money to keep the economy rolling. So what's happening right now in China is that population, the older people getting older, and the young kids, they're basically, because things in China has gotten crazy expensive. You know all about the housing situation in China. I hope most of you know, and how these buildings are, the financial institutions that under the cover use very strange ways, investment and money turnaround games or pyramid schemes to get people to buy homes that were not worth anything, fell apart, or just, it was a big housing crash. We all know that. Now, the young folks cannot afford to buy these houses. So they're doing something called, what is that called? What was that? Laying flat? 躺平. In America, in America, they call it quiet quitting, which I need to learn more about how they actually practice that, especially now. But it's quiet quitting, 躺平. Lie flat, I'm sure. So, or let it rot, 让它腐烂, something, the Chinese young population know that they're having a hard time surviving. So they're not getting married, right? They're delaying marriage at least, right? They are trying their best to live affordably. They're not as extravagant. They have their cell phones though, right? That works in many ways against them because they can't say much on it, and is used as a tracking device for everywhere they go. They need their cell phone. Cash is not becoming a big thing right now in China. Everything is done on their social platform Weibo, or刷来刷去, with these phone apps and all that stuff instead of these credit cards. But nevertheless, moving right on, Peter actually has shown how this effect that China has put on itself by even rapidly expanding at the level that they have is really caused them to trip over themselves. And the COVID-19 situation didn't help very much. And the leader next door, no one talks to him because they're afraid to talk to him. They are afraid to talk to Mr. Xi Zhuxi. I can't call him, Xi 总统, Xi Zhuxi. Everybody next to him is afraid to talk to him because they're afraid that if they give him an advice that he doesn't like, they may be eliminated because, after this latest selection of the Politburo, they look just like, as far as I can see from what I've been reading in the local, especially in the Western Chinese language media, they're just Mr. Xi's yes men. And that's it. People are, I'm sure the guy, there's no one from any opposing groups, that cuts down on your, how would you say, viewpoints from other angles,没有办法看别人的观念. It's just, you cannot get it. You can't see other people's, I'm trying to speak in English. I should call him King now. Okay. It's early in the morning, so let me speak English. Okay, boom. I get tripped up. I'm tripping up right now. No, here we go. So this is the stuff that's getting everyone shaky at the knees, and the world needs to, keep an eye on this. But let me continue. This is a problem. Especially after the wake of what's happening over in in Ukraine and Mr. Putin there, and King Putin, I should say that, right? Russia, he did his thing, and during the Olympics, he obviously said the wrong thing or gave Mr. Xi wrong information about what he was really doing or planning to do with Ukraine, and that caused people here in Taiwan to become a little wider awakened. Now, guys, it used to be here that military, subscription was only 4 months. Now it's a year. Okay, so now the guys and some of the gals now going to be in the military now for a whole year, which should have been like that always. I mean, if you go to nations like, you go to Israel, you got everybody doing military service. But now the young folks is going to have to do longer military service. And I think is really no other way out of it. They have to do it. A year is, hopefully it'll help them grow up and understand, what situation Taiwan is in. Taiwan population is also the younger population is also decreasing. And yes, there are those who are wishing to go abroad to follow their goals and whatever. But let me go back to what Peter Zehan pointed out. Now, the rich world, position has been changing, and now is at a point of cultural, social, and population transformation, right? And I just mentioned that, the population in these rich world nations, older folks are getting older. They're getting older. Because they have insurance policies that are take care of them quite well, a lot better than in China. They have certain government protections, and the healthcare system in the United States may not be the greatest, but it's better than a lot of places. Here in Taiwan, the healthcare situation is a lot cheaper and a lot more accessible in the United States in many ways, because we have something here called the jianbao, and you can go to a hospital, bring your card, and you see the doctor in and out. But let me continue here. And the rapid industrialization in China caused a really sudden shift in how family unity used to be defined. Yes, that's right, Earl. I don't know if a year. And also the payments for the soldiers have also been risen, which is cool. But it's not many people are really shouting about it here, because they do understand the situations the neighbors next door has put them in. So let's continue here. Like I said, the older population has to be supported in mainland China, and it looks like they're going to have a hard booty time trying to support it. And this is the thing that kind of caused me to kind of not sleep well. Because usually when a nation is facing surmountable amount of or financial problem, or even political, to a level that they would like to shift the attention of their population onto another thing. And it looks like China's going to go back to its old way of changing a shift of people's population's focus, and that is called nationalism. Now, there's nothing wrong with people having national thoughts about their nations and stuff like that, but when it's being the information coming into the population is being filtered in a certain way or remotely controlled, this is what I see is a danger for the whole world, and especially for those of us living right here in TW. This is parts that people need to get, especially here, shaky at the knees. Because in a population that really doesn't know what's going on or doesn't have access to information, they, in some cases, have no other choice but to accept what they hear around them and what is being propagated to them. There's a large number of 无贵好久不见了. There's a large population in China that they don't live in the big cities, but countryside, kids, if the education they're getting, the propaganda they're receiving in their heads is quite scary. They may be sent off over here to come over to TW to so-called take it back. What? No, please. But there are those, especially from the cities, who are a lot more educated, who are able to flip over the Great Wall of China, and see what's going on. This is a major part of the population that may not be willing to fight because they have more access to information. through VPNs and things like that. I'm sure you guys, one of my videos, I put a piece where there's people in the public protesting in Shanghai and talking about down with the CCP and all that stuff. I still have a question mark on that situation, but people in the urban areas are woke. Now, I also want to mention something is that we should keep in mind also. When the white paper movement happened in China, if you remember that the schools said, okay, guys, we're going to send you home now. Okay, send everybody back home. We'll pay for you to go back home and everything. I saw that as a trick. If you are, remember, the young population in China, they have their cell phones with them all the time. And it's quite easy to just put up a computer, look up a time, the log date, and you can know where they were at a certain time. And if they were in a certain area that they shouldn't have been, that was reported to have a protest crowd, they know that they've been there. So when they go back home, they will be they'll either be punished or put under heavy surveillance by the local, the local police station who have to follow the rules from the central government. And they may be, as they say here in China, 被修理 or invited to have some tea. But let me go back to this. This is what nobody spoke about in the Western media. They just mentioned that, the university will pay for the students to go back home and all. No, please. When they go back home, they're going to have tea with a certain community leader, with their family members, and they'll be told a few encouraging words. You can fill in the blanks, but let me continue. So Peter Zeihan, like I said again, please visit his site, ZAIHAN.com. He knows what he's talking about. He just was on, I think it's 2 days ago on Joe Rogan's show, and he really put some hard information out there. So he said something that got my knees shaking all the way down to my ankles. He said China has, at the most, 10 years before a major implosion. This is quite scary. And China's using nationalism to try to do what a lot of the magicians do. They do something with this hand, so you don't pay attention to what's going on with this hand. And this is what's happening. And a lot of people in the West are too quiet about it, or they just put in the sense of a selective amnesia, or they just have no time to worry about it, right? That's sad. Because if something out here happens, and even if they came and walked over in here within 2 weeks, right? It doesn't solve their problem. They will still have internal problem, will be insurmountable. And I can detail that more, but it will take me about 2 hours to correctly do it, to put it out there. This is something that I see the way they use nationalism to control the population there could put the people and my friends in China in that situation where they have no other choice but to stand up and fight or act like they're fighting, because a lot of them don't want to fight. They say they share many of the same culture. They don't want to fight. If China and Taiwan were to get together correctly and work correctly, I'm telling you, they will be able to make not only a lot of money, imagine, but that's a whole different story too, because a lot of local Taiwan entrepreneurs, saw China as a way of making money, which happens. But my friends here who are Chinese history scholars, I predicted less than 10 years. Turned out more like 15 years, where my friends who went over to China who are earning buku amounts of big time money, after about 5 years, their Taiwanese bosses say, how about, hey, Mr. Chen, why don't you go back to Taiwan? I'm going to replace you with somebody from China. And, people have pride to get angry and, get their severance pay and run back here. But that Taiwanese boss in China with the same cost for one Taiwanese worker, executive, hired 5 local Taiwanese, mainlanders who can do the same thing and maybe even better. That's the truth that's happening here. Well, I'm going way off topic. I have nobody to talk to. That's why I'm ghost talking right now. Maybe how many people I'm talking to? 5 people. Wow, this is a record for me. But another thing is, especially when learning Mandarin Chinese was really hot in the States, we have had friends of mine talking about, yeah, I'm going to China, I'm going to learn Chinese, and I'm going to go to China, and I'm going to be going to manufacturing. Stop it. No. There's so many people from China I know who have kids and children now who are American. They don't need you. They don't need people. No. But we do have a perspective that they'll never be able to have if we just use it and not allow people in the West to not think they're not part of this. But nevertheless, I wonder, will this cause a different shape of nationalism in China to force the local population's eyes on what's happening domestically and not predict who or see who's to blame, and use nationalism as a way to say the rest of the world is picking on us and we have to do something, and that small little piece of land that we have on our East Coast, we need to go over there and kind of run them over. Well, even if they did, I tell you, we won't have Hsinchu anymore. Even if it was captured, it wouldn't be able to be usable to Chinese, and it wouldn't save them in the long term. So, guys, if you have any comments, put it down here. But I just wanted to get this off my chest and point you over to Joe Rogan's podcast. I mean, a lot of companies are now jumping out of, for the past year and a half, running out of China. We're going to, of course, India, Vietnam, which is just too small for really heavy duty majors population, production. And what I'm hearing now, in about 2026, 2027, Apple will be moving at least half of its production line for big major products like the iPhone to India. But there's something that we need to keep in mind, dear old friends at Apple. India is a more democratic nation than China. And the workers there will not just follow up and be as easy to handle as the working population in China are. This is something to keep your eyes on. So if they think India will be their second China, ain't gonna work like that. When people can protest, when people have the right to carry out litigation and stuff like that, Chinese workers cannot do that. But in India, they can. So what's going to happen, I predict most countries now are not going to lock to their product line as heavily as it's done in the past in China, including, companies like not only Apple, but Nokia, what is this company, Logitech, whatever there's too many companies to talk about. But what's going to happen now, you're going to see Mexico is now becoming a great place to produce, to have product lines, to build factories and stuff like that. And in fact, hiring workers in Mexico is a lot cheaper than hiring Chinese workers now, and they're better skilled. Well, as far as I've been reading, they're very well trained, especially in groups. This is how people are when they're looking to break out of their poverty. They are very hungry for anything, and they have less complaints. What will happen to Mexico or Brazil, the BRICS nations? What will happen to them when they get out of a certain poverty level? And get a real taste of what it feels like to be prosperous. Will they become more selective in the type of crap they take from employers? And how would that just trickle down the line? Just a thought. Just a thought, guys. So I just, what time is it here? Okay, so it's coming up on 6 a.m. here. I just wanted to just jump in here and say something. I just did this. I didn't plan. I didn't script this. I just flew off the top of my head. So please, take a peek at what Peter Zeihan is saying. As Peter Zeihan, Zeihan. Listen to, I think, the Joe Rogan podcast was 2 days ago. Too bad it's not here on YouTube. It's on Spotify. I think they put up a short clip up here on YouTube. Okay, good, guys. If there's anything that anybody want to say, if not, I'm going to back out of here. Thank you very much. We'll go ahead for jumping in there. Earl, thanks a lot for jumping in here. And Zisa from Japan, Taiwan. I can't find it here. Okay, I'll find it back later. Look, take care, guys, and thanks a lot. Hopefully I can kind of like up my ante here. It takes so long to edit stuff here. And a one-man show, that's what we do it. Okay, guys, I'm going to go to sleep now, and thanks a lot for dropping by here, and take care wherever you guys are in the world. Peace.